Living in Appalachia is rough. We deal with violence, gun violence, assault, sexual assault, and rape. And these are things that may be talked about within our podcast. And we just want to let you know, viewer and listener discretion is advised. We live in some of the oldest mountains in the world.
Stolen land, stolen again to create the extraction state.
We are real people talking about real things in a real way.
This is Appalachian Livin.
Welcome to Appalachian Livin.
Yeah, welcome.
We are in the debrief period of a really exciting weekend that we are trying to organize and explain. Would you like to say anything before I dive into a framing of what?
Yeah, go ahead, because I thought all day today it was Wednesday, and it's Thursday.
It is Thursday.
So I need to process.
So, yeah, we spent 3 days with a group of folks from 4 states, which is disconcerting in itself. But in the process, we wrangled 30 people across 5 counties and showed them a whole lot of stuff.
Now, you knew a lot of these people.
Yes. So these folks are from Towson University, the University of Pittsburgh, and we had invited a group of folks from East Palestine, Ohio, where the train derailment happened in 2023. And the reason these groups are together in conversation is because they live in environments that are impacted by extraction somehow. East Palestine most recently has been, a large segment of their community has been impacted by the train derailment and the aftermath of that, which deserves its own time. I don't want to tell their stories, but I will say that it's important to point out none of those folks were able to join us because they're too ill to travel. Yeah. And we miss them tremendously. We were able to speak to a couple of them during the course of the tour, and also our friend Melanie from Clairton, Pennsylvania, was not able to join us because she is not well. And that just speaks to their environment and
but also we have to speak to their strength, because I'd never met any of these people. I knew you. The only other one I knew was I'm very bad with names, but Tomas, right, from our very first podcast. He's the reason why we spun this off, was because we were like, hey, that's fun. We did okay. So he was there, and his wife, amazing people,
Nikki
amazing,
and Tomas.
But I didn't know any of these people.
So yeah, these were folks who have lived in and around things from extraction communities. For example, the folks who were there from Curtis Bay, which is in Baltimore proper, I guess. They stare at a huge mountain of coal, literally the size of a what I would consider a small hill here. And they, a couple years ago, decided they wanted to find out where that coal came from on the CSX trains that brought it in. And so as part of a student effort with some professors, they began mapping where the coal was extracted and how it traveled to places like Curtis Bay. And turns out one of the mines that this coal comes from is in Pax, which is an easy mine to see from the road. It's right off of I-77 north of Beckley as you head toward Charleston. And so these students were very excited to connect these dots. And then the folks from the University of Pittsburgh deal with a lot of the petrochemical build out and the new cracker plants in that area and the impacts on air quality. So I've done this work for a number of years through my work at Caverd. You heard about that in one of our early podcasts, I think the second podcast about Larry Gibson. And we've always brought people here who are unfamiliar with toxic environments. We've always brought people here to teach them about what it's like to live in these areas where your water is unsafe, where your air is unsafe, where you're constantly under this barrage of chemicals and impacts. This group was different. This is a group of people who work within these communities regularly. We weren't teaching them anything or telling them anything they didn't know. This was about building community.
They taught us too.
Oh my gosh.
A
oh
lot.
my gosh.
I
Did they
think
ever
we
teach
all
us?
learned from each other. And the night that we met, we were asking about the people from East Palestine because we weren't sure if they were coming. And there was one of them that was in the hospital.
Yeah, Chris.
And he was like, I'm going to make it tomorrow. And we're like, oh, okay. I mean, if you think you're good, then come on.
He said if he felt better, he was going to get in the car and drive down from East Palestine, Ohio, which is probably, maybe 7 hours.
I was going to say several.
Yeah. I've gone up twice, and it's a haul. You know, it's an overnight, easy, it's an all-day trip. And we just told him, you be well, and you are intended to have a private VIP tour when time comes around. We will make sure that we get folks here. I also want to say that the team that I've worked with to create this experience, the other aspect that was always important to us is we bring people here and destroy their lives. We would bring people from these places
and then send them home
with this enormous
wreck them and blow their minds
say
and be like,
everything is untrue. Here is what is really happening. Pull the curtain back and put the burden on their heart and then send them home. And so it was important for us this time, for these particular folks, to end in a place that is really beautiful and that is really special. And we landed in the place where I grew up on Friesland Mountain in Raleigh County. And so I felt so privileged to wrap things up in that space because you don't hear explosions, you don't hear compressor stations, you don't breathe chemicals or sulfur from mines. It's our nation's newest national park. And I hope that folks enjoyed that experience, and I hope that they unpacked and processed some of what they experienced over the weekend, because we laid a lot on them. I'm got my notes here of things we talked about. They started out Thursday night when they got here. Like, they arrived around 1:00 and got in vans and took off for a Chemical Valley tour.
We weren't a part of that.
We were not a part of that. I have a full-time job that is much more than full-time. I have an 8-year-old son. I couldn't be a part of it that evening, but Alex Cole took them and rocked their world and just informed them about all of the chemical build-out that's happened in the past 100 years in the Ohio.
Which we should reference our last podcast.
Yes.
With Rusty Williams, who lives and grew up in Nitro in Chemical Valley, who ended up with testicular cancer
at 33 years old.
And I'm not smiling because
it's
my kid. You can hear my kid. If you can't hear my kid, awesome.
But yeah, an important connection is that we've talked about this, and then these folks got to see not only the plants, but also some of the disposal areas.
And we hung out in it. Like, we stayed in Kanawha City.
Yeah, we stayed in Kanawha City. So just between all of that and Bell and down toward, how do you say it? Sheelan. I've said it wrong my entire life.
I just go by the commercials I listened to when I was growing up.
So we weren't present for that part of the tour because that's not really my wheelhouse or area of expertise. But we were there to greet them at the hotel when they arrived back from that. And we sat down with some folks in the lobby after everybody got some dinner, and we talked about the next day, which was Friday. And
I got to meet some of the people that you already knew, and everybody was so nice and friendly and really inquisitive about me and wanted to know about me. And I'm like, why? Why are you?
Because we've been pumping you up for 4 months on this trip and telling people about you. That
I have whatever. And I was like, oh, like they were so nice. Everybody was very, very nice. And attentive and receptive to the things that we said. And they asked some really honest questions too. And I thought they were great. Like the whole group was just amazing.
It was an amazing group of people. And again, these are folks who we don't have to teach about impacts. You'll hear some of their stories tangentially, but there were other folks that are also developing material for podcasts and documentaries. So we will share that once we have it. So you'll get a full rich experience of the weekend. But we're here to break down kind of what we did. So we weren't part of the petrochemical stuff.
But we started them on Friday
morning.
And the first thing we went through was the first stop we wanted. You had the itinerary basically, but the first stop was going to be at the Miners Memorial in Whitesville, right?
I'm not going to let you do this, Nikki. Kimmy, we're not doing this. We're going to use my list.
But I know we went over.
Slaughter Creek. We went
Slaughter
through
Creek.
an active strip mine on Slaughter Creek.
Well, I mean, we didn't stop there, but that was like kind of on our way.
Correct, and it's a county road that they built a strip mine
and I have some
around.
footage of it, and I'll show you what we have so far. Let me get.
So the
back up
first
here.
time I found this road, Google.
So first, okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to start with the truck crew. Right. So me and you originally were going to be in your Outback, Subaru,
in my car,
whatever.
Yeah.
Had a flat. So then we were in this big old Hemi
My
truck.
Dodge Ram 1500 crew cab. Yes.
And which was really good because we
Worked
have
out
video of us
perfect.
going up Cayford where there's kind of a little stream that we had to hop over. And they had
Putting
they
it
had
mildly.
passenger vans. And so the first truck crew was Max and Meg, and they were so amazing.
They are two of the most intelligent people. Meg is a teacher. And again, these folks, you'll learn more about them throughout the podcast and throughout the process. But Max is a documentarian. He's a journalist. He's an investigative journalist with the Real News Network is his podcast. We will link to it and absolutely share out information from him. But
For sure.
he is the reason that we are tied to the East Palestine folks, because when all the national media stepped away from East Palestine after they spun the story that they wanted everybody to hear and they walked away, Max stayed in that space for a year. And when the anniversary rolled around, he was the one there with folks who was able to put out the call for people like me to come and join them and raise awareness that a year later, people were really sick. Nothing had been done. No federal emergency declaration had been made for them. And so I really credit Max for pulling me back in with the water issues.
Because that all sounds very familiar,
Absolutely,
does it not?
absolutely.
Does
and
it
so
not?
You and Max are kind of the people who have me here again in this
How
this
fitting.
space.
We were the first truck crew.
And it just occurred to me as we're talking through this that that's the case. So Max, thank you. Meg, thank you.
That's the
Lindsay.
lore of the truck crew, right?
So we were in the lead.
This is the beginning of this lore.
Right. And we go over, so Slaughter
I have
Creek
some footage of Slaughter Creek.
Road,
and
I think, or Drive. I don't know what the proper name of the road is, but this is a
first it
county
was a
road.
rainy day.
It is the
That's the
rainforest.
caravan.
Yeah, we have a whole caravan of folks there. This is a county road that goes right through an active mine.
So we went through an active mine. This is just a couple seconds, but the reason it's called this file is because
it's a big bucket.
it's a big bucket.
I don't think you realize how enormous the mine equipment is until you get beside it.
I
or
know.
In some
and we were in a
context
big
with
old
it.
Hemi truck.
We
and
were
we're
in a
like,
big truck.
That's
yeah.
a big old bucket.
And I had never seen them tramming the equipment on the mine, so that was a new experience for me as well. And so the guard gate is an important spot because when you approach any mine, you're going to see what they call the guard shack, or is there another name for it, Tom? I mean, guard shack is
That's what we've always called it.
Yeah,
it's
guard
the guard
shack.
shack.
the guard shack is where you enter the mine, you check in. If you're driving a truck, you kind of, Just check in with
You
somebody
even have
there.
those guard shacks at hospitals and
Yeah.
colleges. At WVU, they got them all over the place.
Right, when you go into a parking area or something, when
Yeah.
you go into the Greenbrier, you check with the guard, right?
Yeah, same thing.
Well,
It's the
these
same
mines
thing.
are very similar. So the first time I drove into this mine, I didn't know if I had permission to be there. I mean, Google was showing me it was a county road, but how in the world could a county road go right through a strip mine? I was just kind of surprised.
This is a minute video here.
Yeah. So we're entering, I don't know the name of this mine. It will be on a sign up here, but this is, as you can see, there are office buildings and many vehicles. We've been driving through some pretty remote area up until now. And this is kind of the entrance to the mine. So this is where the miners come and park and, you know, get on the equipment and go out into the mine. And there will be a guard shack up here, and that's just a little building that has a guard that keeps people who shouldn't be on the property from being on the mining property usually, but this is a county road. If you look up here to your right, you can see piled up, leveled out, terraced areas there. And these areas change significantly every couple years, right? Like they move so much earth and move things around that it looks very different now than it did a couple years ago. But
Frogs.
you hear peepers.
I don't know. I don't think I have my phone outside that truck.
That's good footage. You got some good footage there.
Thank you.
So yeah, the first time I went through it, I stopped at the guard shack and asked, "Am I allowed to go through?" Because it looks like a mine.
I'd be worried.
And she said, of course, when they slide the barriers out and block the road, be sure and stop because they're moving the big mine trucks and the equipment back and forth, but they'll open it up again once they're done crossing through. So I proceeded forward, and I had never been actually inside an active mine before, so I think it's really a good place to start to give people kind of the scale and magnitude of it. And that morning you couldn't even really see anything because it was so foggy.
It was.
And they've created those berms,
Yeah.
so it's a bit difficult to see kind of what's over the berms.
And we're not really in the mine. We're on the mine.
That's true. We're on the mine. That's a great point. That we're on the surface.
Yeah, we're
of
not
this mountain.
inside.
Right.
We're on top of the mine. We're rolling right in it. Not in it. On it.
On it.
Through it.
Through it.
Over it.
Upon it.
So, we went through the active mountaintop removal, and then we went
We went down into Whitesville
into Whitesville,
to the Upper Big Branch Miners Memorial.
Miners Memorial, and there's a whole video of you went. And so what we do is we load them up and we take them to the Miners Memorial, and we take them out there and we let them look and see, and Elise gives her little speech.
I'm not entirely sure what I said there, but I know it was within the context of that. I will say that we were there.
Would you like me to play some of it for you?
No,
Because we can play.
We can play a little bit, but we were there the day before the 15th anniversary of the Upper Big Branch mining disaster,
Which
where
I think
29 men died.
That in itself, because what happened the next day was kind of crazy.
Yeah, we had a lot of. The weekend was very. It felt as though the ancestors and the mountains and everything was helping tell the story. That's what it felt like all weekend. It just felt like everything combined and coalesced in a way that enhanced and supported and validated all the things that we were trying to express and convey to this group of people. And it was, to quote our beloved Sabrina, "No, Sam, it's magic."
It's magic. And I can see her face.
It was
Sam,
magic.
It's magic. So this is the Whitesville. I'll let you just kind of watch it for a little bit, just so you can kind of see what we got.
Story of the mining explosion, and in short, coal dust not being sucked out of the air with proper ventilation is what ignited and caused the explosion. And so I haven't read what their version of events is.
This is their version.
Yeah.
Of course.
And the the memorial and all the infrastructure you see down here celebrating the company store. There's a little company store set up there. It's this is not a negative part of their history. This is losing miners as a function of working in the mines, right? But this mine explosion, the reason it was so egregious, Lindsay, careful, honey. There's a truck coming. Again, when you mine coal, that very fine dust that comes off of the coal dust, is incredibly volatile. It's explosive, that's right. And so that's what caused this. Some people thought it was a gas explosion, but it was lack of ventilation. And Don Blankenship, who was the mine owner, actually went to trial over the death of these miners. And he got a very light sentence, but when they talked to the jury afterwards, the jury didn't realize that he wouldn't be held liable for these murders. Like, they held him liable for conspiracy to evade mine laws, basically, I think is what the conviction was. But the result was 29 deaths.
And he just showed up in the news this last week.
Don Blankenship?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's out of jail.
What's he doing these
Oh, I'm sure he has political aspirations to be governor or something like that. Because people who live in a delusional world and live in a bubble really believe that the people they surround themselves with who support them represent the rest of the world sometimes, and that's not necessarily the case. But the accountability for these types of things is one of the issues that's always a problem, right? If they take off the top of a mountain and a rain event happens and it causes catastrophic flooding that never happened before, well, that's an act of God. That has nothing to do with the industry, right? So that's the mentality and the mindset that exists here.
It's literally what wipes, half of western North Carolina off the map.
And I love that you made that connection when we did the podcast at Red Emma's, because those floods would not have been as bad. We know that from 2001, right? We know that it wouldn't have been as catastrophic. And 26 years later, there have been no changes to how they mitigate this mining practice, and so you have the same types of catastrophic flooding in multiple states. Let's go ahead and walk up here to the...
People in our van asked after the explosion, were people critical of Massey Energy? Can you talk a little bit about the role Massey played in terms of providing?
Well, Massey created a culture of, if you work for a company, if you're a Massey miner, you buy in fully. They shut down mines and have family days, right, where they bring in Ted Nugent to put on a free concert for the miners and their families, right? So the company, the collective company paradigm is, if you work for Massey, you run coal, that's what you do. They did get pushback, and the result was a trial, right? In the grand scheme of things, holding a mine operator accountable in this situation hadn't happened before, right? And so the pushback resulted in a trial, but nothing substantive really came from that, right? Nobody went in and said, we got to change this or do this differently. And that's the frustration. There's no next follow-up step. MSHA and OSHA and the safety people that they just cut all their funding, the mine safety organizations that are no, this is really important. We need funding to make sure these things are safe. When you see even those folks step up and say, no, we need some mining safety and regulation, that should show you that the canary in the coal mine analogy, right? So back in the day, they would take canaries in cages into the coal mines so that if they would hit pockets of gas that was deadly, the canary would die, and they'd know that they would have to vent or get out. So if you've heard that expression, like a canary in a coal mine, that's your first warning that something's very, very wrong, right? Well, we've just been blowing past those warnings here for 100 years. And so the idea of this myth of the inbred hillbilly, I'm glad y'all touched on it yesterday with Alex, and the chemicals, right? When you heard about the inbred hillbilly and all the backwoods inbreeding, all of the stonework you see down here, the old stonework, was mostly done by Italian immigrants. The African American community was largely present in these mines, Scottish immigrants. The amount of diversity that existed here was unlike it is today. It was way more diverse than today. So to think that inbreeding was the reason there was birth defects is absurd. Like these were, yeah, so what?
Melungeon.
The Melungeon race, right. And so I'll let somebody else talk about that because I don't know a whole lot about that, but Lindsay can talk to that. But when you start looking at, even with regulations in place, when you're exposed to these chemicals, your birth defects, your death rates, your cancer rates, all of your things are elevated. 100 years ago, there were no regulations. So you were breathing all of this stuff, you were drinking all of this stuff. I'm actually looking forward. It's going to get really hot today when it gets humid. So it's going to happen. I'm willing it to happen. Even with regulations in place, you still have high instances of all of these awful things that happen genetically to your body, right? So to say that that was inbreeding was a way to marginalize the community, to discredit it, to make people go, oh, I don't want to look at that. That's gross, right? And it changed the narrative and the story about Appalachia. I left Appalachia as a young woman thinking I needed to go be a better hillbilly, right? And go show people that we're not all dumb and inbred. I carried their narrative with me out into the world. And then I got back here and realized that it was bullshit. That's bullshit. That was a way to discredit and marginalize and make us less than. You want to know why? Because we're the men and women that fought on Blair Mountain. We are the descendants of the people that you had to bomb to stop. And so you have to tell us different stories about who we are and make us believe it in order to stop us from taking you down. That's what I came to. Does that cover basically what you wanted to cover? But when you talk about Massey Coal and these coal companies and how they've created this environment where if you say anything negative, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to criticize. You're not allowed to critique. And if you do, you'll be ostracized. And that's no different than the coal camps. And telling women they couldn't talk across the backyard when they were hanging laundry because they might be organizing a union meeting. You were not allowed to talk to your neighbor in the backyard in a coal camp. They what?
They hid under their houses.
They'd hide under their houses to communicate. Hey, if you ever heard a smidge or a dash or a pinch, those were code words created in the coal fields to, by giving someone a recipe, you could tell them when and where a union meeting was happening.
Also quilting, right?
Quilting, messages in quilting. How many daisies you carried into the company store when you went to get your groceries? What might be a signal as to what time a union meeting was happening that night.
Brilliant.
That was the covert operation that had to happen to create what eventually became the union. So this has been going on forever here, like stifling, oppression, keep us down, don't talk about it. And we'll talk about black lung tomorrow too, and how people don't realize that there are still miners who get black lung all the time, and only a portion of them get their benefits because you have to actively pursue it and fight for it. And when you're dying, that's a very difficult thing to do. And that is profoundly unfair. It's like how we treat our veterans, right? We want you to break your body and destroy yourself for our purposes, and then we're going to hang you out to dry when you're done. Unacceptable. There's always a spin,
Right.
at the plaques and on the monuments and the memorials. There's always a very coal-washed version of events, but this was a particularly painful. Bless you.
Bless you.
Becky. This was a particularly painful disaster
It
for our
was.
community, and I noticed, some of the students pointed out while we were there by the memorial that the names and the ages of the men listed there indicate that they were probably relatives.
They were. There's a video that I just happened to see, I think maybe because I was Googling something or whatever, and it come up on YouTube. I don't know. But it was a man that lost his nephew and his son.
So this was an uncle and a son there.
Yeah, and there were like father and son died. There were, and a lot of people here in Wyoming County, and I know in Boone County, everybody knows somebody that died. Yes, Tom.
And my friend Mitchell Church, that does the podcast, the Appalachian Alliance, we recap Survivor. We're Survivor fans. Anyway, he had a cousin that was killed in Upper Big Branch. And I think for the listeners, if you'd like to have a deep dive on the Upper Big Branch disaster, there is a podcast by my friend JD Belcher called UBB, a miners
Memorial
or something like that.
A minor
Anyway,
story.
A minor story. And he, is an ex-miner. He was involved in mountaintop removal mining, but he did a deep dive on this disaster, and it is extensive and it's very, very good. I recommend it.
So yeah, between that and what we said here, I think you can get a good feel for what happened. Mm-hmm. And then
this was the first day. Okay, this was the first stop, and then after
this is where we then went to make sure we could make it up what I call the backside of Cayford Mountain.
This was fun because this was the time that this truck crew was
proved our worth. And so if you are from anywhere in the mountains, you know that major rainstorms
here's a video of us
impact roads, right? So you can see it's like a
stream
steep.
going down the mountain. And there they are behind us.
That's the road we left everybody down on, and we went up to check and make sure that the road wasn't washed out. Because I've traveled on this road before, and if you can't progress forward, you have to back off of it. There aren't a whole lot of places to turn around, especially passenger vans, which are large vehicles. So I wanted to avoid that situation. So we left them at the bottom of the mountain and drove up, the four of us in the truck, and we went up to where I felt like anything beyond that was probably navigable. And it's ironic that I stopped actually just short of the worst part and
Max
thought
and Meg
maybe
went up
I'd
it
messed
twice.
up. Yeah.
Max and Meg, y'all went up it twice. So
Yeah.
rock stars.
So that is the road to Cayford Mountain and the Stanley Ayers Park from Dorothy. So if you come out of Whitesville, you make a turn and you go toward Dorothy, and you cut up, again, what I always called the back way to Cayford, because I always approached Cayford from the interstate through the the Sharon Cabin Creek exit off the interstate, which we left Cayford Mountain that way, and everybody was very relieved that we went off that way, because you can run haul trucks off that way, right? Like, it's not a four-wheeler trail. And I just have to say, many years ago when I started this work, I did this for probably a year before I went down that road. And some folks came up the road one day, and they got out of the van or car shaking. And I kind of made fun of them. I was like, whatever, like, oh yeah, it's such a scary dirt road. It's the scariest damn dirt road I've ever been on in my life. And you've been on it now. So, I mean, what do you think? You've been on some dirt roads in your day. What do you think?
It reminded me of McDowell County. I was not personally scared.
Well, right.
Because I knew what kind of vehicle we had, and I knew what kind of driver we had.
And
I was like, Max and Meg were like, oh my God. I was like, y'all, we're good. And they're like, you don't understand. But they needed to warn the people in the vans when we got down there. I was like, okay, y'all got to follow us up here. And they're like, they went out there, and I don't know what they told them.
I don't know what they told them either, but they prepared them for the
And I was like,
road.
what do y'all, what? They were like, we have to prepare them.
I mean, you had a gaggle of Yankees,
Yes.
right?
It was hard for me to remember that.
Right.
Because here I am, mountain mama, and I'm like, this reminds me of my childhood riding with my dad in a Mustang up a McDowell County mountain.
Dirt road, right.
And we were in a Hemi truck. I'm like, shit,
Yeah,
if we run down that mountain, that tree's going to stop us. We're good. It's all right. And
I will say everybody did remarkably well. The drivers did an amazing job. And we got to the top, and Tomas, our professor friend from Pittsburgh, he looked at me, he said, that was kind of fun. And I was
he was in his car, right?
He was in his private personal car, yeah.
Yeah, because we had five. I think we had five. We had us, two vans. Tomas was in his personal car. Sometimes we had Gail.
Gail and Michelle joined us on Kayford that
And
day.
then Max and Meg were sometimes behind us.
Sure. So,
Oh my gosh, we had people, and then they would scatter because some people had their own cars, and they're grown-ups. They can do whatever they want.
right. I'm not trying.
And we're like, hey, this is where we're going. We have Google. This is where we're going. This is when we're here, you know.
But in general, an epic convoy effort. I think we had a successful convoy.
Yeah.
So whenever I go to Kayford Mountain with groups of people, I am not from there. I really like to pull people who are from the community to come speak to folks who come there, if at all possible. One of the important things you learn as an organizer is the best people to tell the stories of a community are the people who live there. So because I, as Rusty and I have said, you know, because I've been gifted with the gift of BS and I can speak well, folks are often trying to put a camera in my face or ask me questions from within the community. And I'm like, you need to go talk to so-and-so, like I did with Tomas and you. Like, you need to go talk to Lindsay. She's the one who's actually down there doing it. And so we were fortunate enough to have Junior Walk join us, who is, as he describes in his videos, so tied to Kayford, he actually has ancestors buried there. And he talks about learning that later. But I feel like we brought a picnic lunch. There is a pavilion you can set up. You'll see from the videos. We let folks set up and build their sandwiches. And then while they're eating, we kind of talk to them and give them the background.
Sorry.
It is allergy season here, and I am on 2 packs of Alka-Seltzer severe cold and flu for my sinus pain, because as beautiful as it is, this is what it makes you sound like. We hear Ricky over there sneezing.
Yeah.
Sneezing and coughing.
I'm good. But Junior, we didn't know if we were going to get to see him.
That's
because
right.
you tried to get a hold of him.
He's a hard man to track down.
And we just happened
Ran
to
into
see him because he saw our vans and he pulled in behind us, and we're like, he said, was I supposed to meet y'all? And we're like, well,
As a matter of fact,
yes and no.
we didn't have a scheduled appointment, but since you're here,
We're trying.
can you come up and join us on Kayford and talk to us? And so I always, if you listen to our second podcast, you'll hear most of what I say in the introductory comments to Kayford about how I came to learn about it and wind up there. And then Junior taking it over from there. I got to tell you, I am always so inspired whenever I hear Junior say anything, whether he's in a mellow mood or whether he's fired up. He is, like you and Tom, just so authentically of and from this place that you got to give him that cred, right? Like, you got to give him homage for that. Like, he's willing to speak out on these very tough issues, and he speaks the truth. Mm-hmm. And he tells his story in very powerful ways. So we have some fabulous footage of Junior.
We also, Kimmy introduced Junior.
So Kimmy's not Kimmy. Kimmy's name is Dr. Nicole Fabricant. She's an anthropology professor at Towson University. She is a very good and close friend of mine, has been for about 13 or 14 years now. And Lindsay struggles with names. Is this a common thing?
That's ADHD.
Okay.
Well, okay,
She
but
just
there was 30 people.
That's ADHD.
I would
Now,
never expect you to remember everyone's name, but renaming 50% of the people was unexpected.
I was
that's a
you
neuro-
look like a Kimmy.
That's
and
a-
this one girl goes, she's got Kimmy vibes.
She's got Kimmy vibes.
And I'll tell you, it's a neurodivergent thing. And
What?
my grandfather,
Spicy.
who his nickname was Doodle. Okay, because his brothers and sisters said he used to doodle around the yard, right, when he was a little boy, when he was a toddler, which it sounds to me like stimming,
Right.
right? And so he had that name for the rest of his life, Doodle. His wife called him that. That's how he signed his name most of the time. But he would nickname everybody. Everybody he ever met.
That's right. You were Jake.
I was Jake, you know.
Oh, that's right. We talked about this because
we talked about this.
my husband's uncle calls my son Henry. And my son's name is not Henry, but he calls him that And I
Yeah.
love the name Henry, and I'm like, oh,
Well,
that's cute.
his grandpa used to call him Jake.
Uh-huh.
My dad calls Ricky Jake.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And when he started calling him Jake, Tom goes, my grandpa used to call me that.
That's wild.
My dad didn't know that.
That's
he just
wild.
started calling him that.
So Junior's talk,
Do you want to play any of it?
I mean, that may just be a hillbilly thing. You just nickname folks.
maybe.
That might be.
I don't know.
That might be that.
Y'all comment and tell us, is this something that happens in other places?
I don't normally do this, though.
Is this
I
not?
don't.
It was interesting because nearly every single person, and you actually started with Rusty. It's almost as though this podcast has
I
triggered
know.
this
It's
in
like
you.
your name's not. I don't
Don't seem like a Rusty to me.
But I just can't, every time I try to think of his name, I'm like, it's Rusty. That can't be it. And then Gail seems like a Kate. and Michelle is a Nicole.
Oh my gosh, we had enough Nicoles.
Nicole is actually Kimmy,
And the other
then
Nicole was Nicole.
But then Nikki was like, "Yay, I'm the only Nikki." So I have a problem, but it's okay.
It's okay.
It's fine.
At least nobody got offended, right?
Not that I'm aware of. It seemed like everybody felt good about their rename.
I don't think Kimmy really liked her name, and then I tried to rename her. She goes, "No, it's Kimmy."
It's stuck.
She's like, that one's even worse.
Oh my god.
Okay, so Junior took us to church, and I was talking to Elise about this just a minute ago because you know how, and this might confirm some things for some people because it confirms some things for me. Because you know how you leave a situation, a social situation, and when you step away, you're like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed.
Your self-critic kicks in.
I shouldn't have done that. And for me, during this moment, when we watch the video, you'll hear me in the background. I'm not mic'd, but I'm using the camera. But Junior starts talking about some things that resonate with me. His father was in the strikes in the 80s. And I'm like, my dad was too. And he said, where? McDowell, the guy that got shot. Oh, yeah. We started talking about that. And then Junior took us to church.
He did. And you said you critiqued yourself for kind of interacting and interrupting in that moment.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, he's talking. I shouldn't be interrupting him because I always feel like I do that. And I've been trying to work on that.
But
right?
then you watched the video, and what did you see?
I think I riled him up. I think he was like, yeah. And then he just, like, it started and it snowballed. And then he riled himself up. And then people were like, yeah. And then I was cheering so hard. I was trying to hold the camera and I was jumping and sliding in the mud. But it was like, yes, this man is speaking the truth, And
again, another person that Larry Gibson trained and taught to. You'll hear Junior talk about his relationship with Larry and how they traveled together and how they spoke together at a number of events.
I got to tell you, I thought that when you guys spoke about Junior, I thought he was his son.
Oh, you thought he was Larry Jr. Okay.
I thought he was Larry's son. And he was Junior and he was very close to Larry. And then I learned on this trip that that's not the case.
That's not the case. No, he was, Junior grew up in Eunice, in Boone County, right on Route 3. And there's like 12 houses in Eunice. I know y'all been by there. It's a tiny, tiny little community, right? And he went to work as a security guard for a strip mine right out of high school. And he wasn't there long, and he came home and said, that's blood money, and I won't take it. And that was what started his activism. And, it's been 11 years. I've known Junior 11 years, and he, I guess I've known him longer than that. I've known him 14 years, 12 years. I'm terrible at math. This is my Gen X math problem.
I'm terrible at names. You're terrible at math.
However long I've known Junior, he has only become a more polished speaker. He is when he knows what he's saying, it's absolutely right, and what he said on the mountain was amazing.
I'm going to play it because I just feel like we need to hear
just
it.
that clip.
So yeah, go ahead and play that clip.
But you personally, how do you square, like, kind of coming from that deep, rich, working class union tradition and other people that you live around who are part of that tradition are trying to kill you?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, growing up, I heard all them stories about the strikes, and I heard what pieces of shit scabs was. You know what I mean? And that's in people who wants to put a bullet in my head. Those are scabs. You know what I mean?
Tried to put a bullet in my dad's head, but put a bullet in his friend's head instead.
Yep.
Scabs. My dad left and moved to another state because he was not going to be a scab.
Yep. Yeah, thankfully my papa had his retirement up at that point, and he was able to
My dad is
get
9
out.
months shy of his union.
Yep.
He never got his union pension. Wow.
Yeah.
9 months shy. So,
That's awful.
Awful.
But no, I was going to say, nowadays, the situation on the ground is that these little communities around here, for the most part, now, you'll find a handful of people that live around here in these communities that work for the mines, might have a decent paying job running some heavy equipment, or like setting off explosives, or whatever they're going to do. But for the most part, these communities are full of retired people and disabled people and poor people. These are some of the poorest counties in the whole United States. These strip miners that have these good jobs, that have these $80,000 pickup trucks, they don't live down here in the communities where I grew up. In Whitesville, in Eunice, Naoma, them areas, you know what I mean? They live an hour and a half, 2 hours away, where they get to drive down here every day and blow up the mountain behind my house, poison my water. Then they get to go back home to Shady Springs or South Hills in Charleston, and they get to turn on their tap and clean water comes out. They get to send their kids off to a private school somewhere that's not underneath a slurry dam. You know what I mean? And that's the dynamic today. And so when I say do away with these coal mines and I don't give a damn what happens next, that's why. It don't put it on my shoulders to tell these miners who are out there financing these pickup trucks how they're going to pay that payment. You know what I mean? Just because I'm the man standing here saying there's a problem. And I'm tired of my community getting sick and poisoned by these people to pay for some coal executive's fucking Ferrari sitting in his garage. You know what I mean? Just because I'm the one saying that's a problem, that don't put it on my shoulders to tell these people what comes next for the West Virginia economy. I graduated high school with a C average. You asking me that, then we got real problems. You know what I mean? Like, seriously. Like that, I am underqualified to answer that question, and I have no interest in answering that question. My answer to that question is we shut down the coal mines 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And then there would be an economy here. You know, you try to bring in an economy, that's putting the cart in front of the horse. These coal companies are going to stomp out any competition that they got. Period. Point blank. Until you do away with the coal mines, there won't be nothing else here. You got to burn it all to the ground before something new grows back in its place. Period.
that's it. That's it. And your paycheck is not worth my life.
That's right. And there ain't no jobs on a dead planet.
No. And as we were talking about the 80s, the mine strikes in the 80s, and we were watching, like, it was a YouTube clip of all the local news or things that they were saying about it. And they was a coal miner, a man, this talking about the guy that got shot, right? Ain't no man's life worth a paycheck. As I listen to that, and they're poisoning my entire neighborhood, saying, well, I got to pay for my family. I'm like, well, I got to pay for my health.
Yep.
You know, and I'm with you, baby. I'm right there with you. Where's the lie?
Mic drop.
Right? So, after we ate lunch and Junior took us to church, then you took everybody around on Cayford and did the whole tour of it. And there were parts of it that you, like, the first part you were like, I hadn't really noticed that mountain was gone.
It caught my attention in the background when I spun around and was talking to somebody. I could see the inside of Coal River Mountain in the distance. And it's the first time I've been on Cayford, and that much of Coal River Mountain has been gone.
How many years has it been since you've been up there?
6. It's been a while.
Yeah.
They had just started mining on the one, left side. If you're standing on Cayford looking at it on the left side, but what we saw, it's heartbreaking. I mean, I don't know anybody that can stand and look at a mountain being murdered and think it's not heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And this is a term that Junior used that I'm adopting from this point forward. This isn't MTR. This isn't a benign 3 letters. This isn't the top of a mountain being scraped off. This is mountain annihilation. This is entire mountain annihilation. This is mountain murder. And as a result, it's annihilation of the communities that rely on these mountains to live.
Yeah. And all the communities are in the valleys. And when you take off the top of the mountain and you only take what you want, you got to do something with the rest of it.
And it goes into the valley.
And when you take all the trees and all the roots and all the plants and all the things that hold water, it just has to go somewhere, and it goes in the valley, and that's why you have flooding.
Catastrophic flooding in these communities that was never an issue before. That community wouldn't be there if flooding was an issue, because it would have flooded 100 times over the last 300 years, right?
No, almost. Everybody would have a flood in their lifetime, but we've had 3 major
if you count
floods.
86. If you count 86, probably closer to 4 or 5.
And then 2001.
There was one before 2001. There was 2001. There was 2016 in the eastern part of the state.
Mm-hmm.
There were parts of these counties that was also impacted, and then you have the recent floods in 2015 that are just mind-boggling. I drove through parts of it. I went to Logan today.
Yeah.
And it's in the middle of nowhere.
We'll have to take Kimmy down Mingo, Logan County.
Next time we're going to do the Mine Wars Museum.
You hear that, Kimmy? Mine Wars Museum, just for you.
We, on our second day, covered a lot of Mine Wars history and Mother Jones history when we started out in the Holly Grove Cemetery in Paint Creek. But
and we'll get to that in a minute.
So on this, after we talk to the folks at the pavilion, we do a first part of the tour where you're walking out to what Larry termed Hell's Gate, because it's right where the active mining was happening. So these couple of clips that you'll see dive into the tour and actually show what I cover in the tour. And you do see me get emotional in these because, again, I don't know anybody who can look at what you see from up there. Now, what you used to see right there on that mountain, you don't see anymore, but you look across the valley and it's just jaw-dropping.
Yeah. It's like, I've been trying to figure out how to describe it. And the last time we were there, you took us there in 2016, 2017, somewhere around there.
2016.
And it looked like the moon, right? It was a bunch of rocks, no greenery. But now there's like some grass on it. There's a road that a big truck could get to.
Trees.
There's some trees, but it's still the part where we're looking over. There wasn't really trees over that. Right? It was like a grassy yard, grove, a little slopey. Not really.
The law requires them to return it to the approximate original contour.
Oh, that's not. Not in any way. I never saw that mountain, but I know what a real mountain looks like, and that's not what a real mountain looks like.
You can see the real mountains right across the valley, and you can see the mountains that are intact and are healthy and haven't been murdered. And
it's eerily quiet in a way as well. minus, having 30 people and, all that. But you didn't see a whole lot of wildlife. It was kind of quiet.
Well, and the wildlife changed as well.
Yeah,
I
I'm
remember
sure.
there were students and professors who came up from universities when I began working up there who would say, there are meadowlarks up here in the middle of what should be deciduous hardwood forest. You hear meadowlarks because in reality there are thousands and thousands of acres of meadow.
What is a meadowlark?
A meadowlark is a particular species of bird that lives
It's a bird?
where there are meadows and
Gotcha.
not forest.
I was
the
thinking
birders-
of a critter on 4 legs.
No.
So I'm glad you told me it was a bird.
Yes, it's a bird. And so the change in creatures that live up there, and also when you consider it, one of our early shorts, you see the bear
Yeah.
on Caford all
That was
those
10
years
years.
ago.
Well, 2016 last time you took me up
so
there.
9 years ago. I always tell people when we camp up there, when you are surrounded by thousands and thousands of acres of desert moonscape, what you just described as meadow, where do you think the critters are?
They're going to be right where those trees are.
They're going to be where the trees in the forest are, right? So you got your snakes and you got your bobcats and you got your bears.
That's a safe space for them.
That's where they live. That's their habitat. And so you always have to be aware that they might be present with you.
Yeah.
What were your feelings about the tour? Because we'll let the videos play for the rest of the folks, but I'm curious to know now that you saw it with fresh eyes again. How did you feel? I always ask people how they feel when they're standing there looking at it, and I didn't this time because it was a big group, and I was tired by that point.
It was our last stop of the day.
Yeah.
Like this was the last thing we were doing, and then we were going back to the hotel and eating some dinner and thinking about the next
Unwinding,
day. Which I think was really good that we didn't try to push
I've done
them
this before,
or
yeah.
us,
It was
right?
too it can be too much. Yeah.
It can, because they had just traveled and did their whole chemical tour the day before that we weren't even a part of. And so we tried to be done by like 4:30, something like that. But I had been up there before. And so I was trying to get my bearings as to like, okay, I remember that. Okay, I remember that. And trying to figure out, where I am. And I was up there because I just had a mic on you. And at that point, it was your phone because my phone was dead. After Junior took us to church, my phone just died. And so for me, oh man, I didn't like it. Of course, I knew I wasn't going to like it. And then when I saw the road and the meadow, I'm like, that's some bullshit. That's bullshit. And so a couple of the people couldn't really go up the hill, or they did, and then they went back down. And then some people were just kind of wandering around. And I hung out with Kate and Natalie. It's just Gail and Michelle. And Angie and Ariel and Ariana.
Who are actually Angie and Ariel and Ariana. Those are their correct names.
Ariel was my girl. She was my best friend.
Yes.
Like
You all have your own whole podcast.
we do. But Ariel was my bestie throughout the whole time. So I hung out with them for a little while, and I kept your phone going for a little bit to get your thing. But the guy was doing a drone, and he was landing the drone there, and I was like, I'm just getting off of this mini rocks, these pebbles that are bunched up. And so I walked around the little forest area, and I enjoyed the forest part. And then I saw this huge rock in the middle of the forest that looked like it had just landed there. And so I kind of had my own moment on the mountain.
And it had just landed there when it was blown off of the mountain that was
And at
there
that point,
before.
your phone was getting a little too hot, I think. And I was like, I'm done filming. So I didn't get a picture of it or nothing, but it's in my memory, and I know exactly where it is and what it looks like. And I could go back to that rock right now. I don't know The rock was screaming to me.
Fly rock is a big issue around these mines.
Well, it was a huge rock because I just imagine that rock coming from the sky and that not being the only rock falling. And if that hit you, it'd kill you, it'd crush you, which, is kind of foreshadowing a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so we took him to Cayford, and you told him all about that. And I know they probably had a bunch of good questions and all that.
This group was particularly smart and particularly...
I felt pretty dumb around...
Yeah, there were conversations.
Even the 20-year-old, I was like, how old are you?
I am certain that one of the reasons that Larry continued to do this work is we derive energy from the youth. The older you get, the more you realize that they bring... I just want to share something. So this is at the end of Cayford, right? So this is a perfect time to share this story. We're coming down the easy side of Cayford, I'll call it, because it's enough. It's big enough for 2 haul trucks to pass each other on this road. So it's plenty wide enough. You get to the bottom, down in the Creek Valley before you get out to the main road, and it's flat. It's quite different than the backside. So we stop to let people take a look at the old infrastructure there,
which is one of my most favorite things. Like, I was out there with Max too. We were just crawling all over that old building.
Cool old railroad tracks. You can see there were 100,000 people plus in those valleys back in the heyday, right, when there were deep mines all over the place. And so these were thriving large communities with all these folks in it. And so you had stores, and you had schools, and you had buildings and all of these things. And so we stopped there, and folks are taking pictures, and Mia comes up to me, and I've told her this story, and I'm confident she's okay with me sharing it because it's fabulous. So you and Max were out of the truck, and we showed the truck crew a minute ago, and me and Meg are sitting in the truck, and I'm in the driver's seat, and Meg is behind me. And Mia comes to the door, and my window's down, and she just squares up with the door, and she looks at me and says, okay, let's say we do away with it all. We get rid of it all. We get rid of all of the electricity. We get rid of everything having to do with fossil fuel and coal and extraction. Then what? And she throws down the gauntlet. Like every other 20-year-old and 19-year-old and every other inspired person who's ever been to Cayford, this is part of your process. This is part of that. How do I work this out in my head? What does it look like without this thing that now I hate?
You have to unravel it.
Yeah, like you have to unpack it and untie it. And it's so beautiful when you are that in it and you're processing it to that extent that you are like, and do you know how good it feels as a leader and as a teacher to have a student come to you with that much honesty and that much emotion and just say, okay, so what? What's the answer? And again, what I tell you, we ruin people's lives. We take them to this mountain and we ruin people's lives and they can't unpack this, right? And Meg is a teacher. And she has fabulous reading lists and books and resources. So we pointed her in a couple directions of what does it look like without electricity?
Yeah.
What does it look like with locally generated electricity with you have a stream that runs by your house. Like what would that look like if it powered something in real time?
Or a windmill.
Right? Or a windmill. And her demeanor as she walked away was like, okay. And she walked back to her van, with this new perspective.
And something to think about.
And a reading list from very smart people who want you to figure that answer out. We don't have the answers. You heard Junior say it. I am unqualified to tell you what exists beyond coal, right? It's not my job. I don't get paid enough to even try to think in that direction, right?
It doesn't lay on my shoulders.
It doesn't matter to me what the next answer is. But Mia and her fellow students and her fellow people in the world who exist in this environment have the answers, and they are going to come up with these answers, and we have sparked them and ignited them. So Mia,
I love Mia.
Yes, that moment for me is what makes my trip. And I said that at the end of the night on Sunday or Saturday. I said, challenge us,
please.
As you know, push it on us, because we're not going to stand here in a place of saying, well, I think this is the way, or I think this is the way. What we're going to do is say, in my experience, here's what works, here's what doesn't, but I don't know the answers.
Here's what's been tried.
Here's what people have tried. Here's what other countries have tried.
And here's what's happening. Look, here's the truth. Here's what's happening. Here's what's been done.
Right.
Because we had people asking about the retraining, you know, and we're like,
so critical to understand that.
They tried it, but it's not like they really tried.
There was nowhere to put people you retrain.
It was like the road to nowhere.
Exactly.
Right?
We can train you all day long, but if we don't have a position for you to move into, we've wasted everyone's time.
So until you have something for them to do, it's pointless. You're just saying, I'll train you, and then maybe you can move away and find something.
But that's what's wonderful about having this regional conversation is they say, well, when I sit in Baltimore and I listen to the news or I listen to this, all I hear is, well, retraining efforts failed in Appalachia.
They don't say why.
They don't say why. They don't provide that context. So part of this weekend this is the first one, right? This is the first one where we've had these type of people in these type of roles come together.
I'm not really sure if this was a good one for me to start out with.
This is the perfect one for you to start out with.
Because I feel like this is going to be the what you call it?
No, this is the beginning.
Because it was really, really awesome. And I'm like, what if the next one is awful?
Each one has its own, like the time that Nikki's group got run off of Cayford by armed miners who were chasing after Junior.
Which is a clip
it's a clip that we'll talk about here.
Yep.
Each trip and each group is unique. And I haven't done this for 6 years. Like I said, I took a big step back, and I'm so grateful I did. How I've grown in the last 6 years and the way in which I present. Like I said, I've graduated in my own mind from organizer to agitator. Being the most dangerous woman in America, which is what Mother Jones was called, is life goals.
Oh my God. And we're going to get ready to get to that.
We're going to get into Mother Jones and Blair Mountain in a minute. But Mia exemplifies the reason we do this.
I have to say something about Mia, because
Please.
I didn't get to connect with her until the last night.
The Itman Company store, right?
Well, it was after. It was at your house. It was like near the end of the night. I didn't get to connect with her until then. But I saw her throughout the trip, and she was always the one that would venture out away from the crowd. She would go explore every place we went. That girl had sticks and rocks. I don't know what I want to know what you took. How many sticks and rocks? And you know, what did you take? Because I remember seeing her with like handfuls of rocks. I'm like, yeah, yeah. And she reminded me of me. And when we were at Hotchkiss, and we were like trying to gather, I'm like, come on, let's go. Like she was like sliding down the mountain because she had already climbed all the way up the mountain.
I had to rein them in at my house and be like, okay, if you're going to go mountain climbing, you need to know that there's bobcats and bears coming out of their dens, and you need to be prepared for this. But I'm not going to stop you from mountain climbing in these mountains if you love it that much. But yeah, Mia and Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Mia and Davis were climbing everywhere they went.
Well, Davis was with me and Max at that old building, and we were talking about, just imagine all these people just running through these halls and that doorway, and how many people. Oh, my God. It was like, you know, and Davis was just, those two, because Davis was with her going down that mountain.
He was right there beside her. They climbed and went everywhere. It was fabulous.
Yeah, but Mia just reminds me of me. Maybe it might be the dark curly hair. Originally, my natural hair is dark curly hair.
This is not your natural color?
No, believe it or not, it's really not. It's really not.
I would have never guessed.
Yeah.
So Mia and Davis, you exemplify again why we do this. It's that process of unpacking it. Well, if not this, then what?
And I loved watching them, and it really just, maybe I was able to live vicariously through them, being like, man, you know, to be 20 again and just be like, I'm gonna run right up that mountain and I ain't got no strings attached, no nothing, you know. I don't care if I get hurt.
Youth is wasted on the young, right, Tom?
My knees are not cracking.
For sure.
As those of us with birthdays this week, like my knees was popping and a cracking.
Well, we would get out of that truck and be like, oh God. And then I'd see Mia just run up that mountain and be like, oh, I wish I could do that.
I have never taken a group to Caford, though, and walked away feeling like I had wasted my time or shouldn't have gone up there.
Yeah.
I can honestly say in probably the 100 trips I've taken up there, I've walked away ignited and excited and hopeful, really hopeful. I mean, you know, what drives me, I'm right, but what keeps me going is I see the future. I see it through the young people who come there. I see it through the young people who go, wait a minute, now this is not okay. There's got to be a better way. And I know that when you plant those seeds, amazing things happen.
And I think almost every single person at some point throughout the trip had asked either me or you, what do we do?
What can I do?
What do we do? I'm like, how about you take this that you learn, that you feel, this emotion, this energy, and you spread it. You let people know that things are not as they seem here, and we know things are not as things are not as they seem there.
Right.
And that's what unites us.
So, what did Larry say to you?
Which time?
When you were like, what can I do?
You seem like a smart girl. That's right. You challenge them with that. And I think the emotion that we saw on Caford, the people who cried and wept, you heard me say on our Caford episode that some people want to go there privately because they know they're going to have that kind of reaction, and they don't want to do that and emote publicly.
That might be why I walked off by myself. And it's not that I didn't cry, and I don't think I really had a physical emotion where you could tell, but I just walked around and it was like, damn, this is where it stops. I can't go any further because it's gone.
Right.
You know, had I been there 100 years before that, I could have kept on a walking
straight up for another 500-600 feet.
And the way it is now is I might fall down, and I can't even imagine just being like, oh, I can still keep going up. But now, no, I can't. And I stood there on the edge as far as I felt comfortable to go, because I was like, Lord, I do not want to be sliding down this mountain and at least be like, where's Lindsay? Hey, where's
told
Lindsay?
Y'all to stay on the trail now.
They're like, I think she fell off the mountain.
And it's important to say that these are inherently dangerous places.
They are, because I remember you telling people that. And
don't go out messing around on strip mines by yourself. Don't go to places you are not familiar with, because these mines, when you imagine mountains that are against each other like this and you take a mountain away, this mountain starts to pull away from itself.
Sure.
And it creates very dangerous conditions that you're trucking through the woods and it looks like you're stepping on ground, and it's really just some sticks with some leaves that fell on it, and there's a 30-foot mine crack.
Especially after hard rains like that, you really don't know what's about to slide.
Don't go into these places without people who know what you're doing, but
go
look at them.
We're from Wyoming County, right? And where did everybody go to camp out and party?
Pinnacle.
Okay.
High Wall Park and Pinnacle.
That's an old strip mine.
Yeah.
Pinnacle is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
That's where everybody went partying.
You know where all of the ATV trails and things are?
Is that where the High Wall Park is? Is that where that?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always go through there like, what? I wonder what that is.
And I think we went up there and camped.
Oh, we did.
One time, right? And that's where we used to go just to mess around.
And that's exactly what it looks like.
A high wall, a big straight flat high wall.
The thing about it is that growing up as a kid, it's like, oh, we're just gonna go up on the strip mine, we gonna party, and then
You didn't realize that this used to be a mountain,
yeah,
Right.
and now it's a flat.
yeah,
And there's a Tyler Childers song, we used to go up on the flats,
yeah,
right? And that's what he's talking about.
the flats in the mountains.
We know
we
where
have the flats.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
Yeah, we now have plateaus.
Right. Yeah.
Straight line winds and tornado warnings on those plateaus as well.
And but it was pretty powerful for me, even though it wasn't something that was unfamiliar for me. And like, I was thinking that, even when you got out of the truck and was like, be careful, I was like, damn, you're right. Like, I needed to be told that.
Right. We have
Even
to be
though I grew
reminded.
up with it, I don't have that kind of fear, because I'm just like, well,
know
I've
better.
walked on a
This is
slate
normal.
dump before.
Right.
This is normal.
Shit, be careful.
We
that,
know when
that,
you're in the woods, you be careful around those places unless you're on the trail that you know. We know that because we
Yeah.
walk in those woods.
Yeah.
But you forget that it's when you're responsible for other people who have never set foot in woods like this.
12-year-olds.
Yeah, from the city.
From the city.
Yeah.
Right.
Ariel.
And they don't understand that,
They were 12.
when you have slate, loose slate.
It is slick.
It's very slick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can fall and not be able to catch yourself
Yes.
until you hit another flat.
Listen,
right?
just try to slide on down it,
And it's like glass.
Yeah.
It is. It's impossible to
So-
stop on those slate
Yeah.
And it'll
shale
cut you.
banks. Yes,
Yeah,
it will.
It will cut you.
Yeah. Just try to get as little,
But we were exhausted I'll speak for myself. I was exhausted at the end of the first day. We ended up in Charleston at Pies and Pints because you have to do
I'm
Pies and
over it.
Pints.
I'm over it. I'm over the whole dinner.
Dinner was a bit rough.
I did not eat. I was starving. I went and got ice cream. Me and Ariel was like, we're going to go get ice cream.
We'll blame Kimmy for that one because she did tell him that we were going to have 12
listen
people.
to her. Okay. And this is all I'm going to say, because I don't blame Pies and Pints for real. I don't, because I have done that. And when Kimmy goes, they just want us to leave. I'm like, I don't blame them, Kimmy. Let's go. We got McDonald's across next to the hotel. At this point, I'll just take it.
I
you
will
know?
say this: next time we'll have a logistics team work on the food specifically, because all the food but people raved about it. It was fantastic. Everybody was like, "Oh, the sandwiches were amazing on Kford. We need to do that again tomorrow." I'm like, "Okay."
You go to Kroger then. But the only thing I'll say about that is that Kimmy's on the phone and goes, yeah, we want 12 people in an hour. And we show up with 21 people.
And all the servers go, "Oh."
Everybody's like, go fuck yourself. Basically, go fuck yourself. You can order pizza to go. And so we ordered pizza to go, and it still took an hour.
Oh, it was still an hour. People had kind of splintered off and went down to this
They
one
went
slice
and
place.
come back, and we were still waiting for our food. They're like, are y'all still waiting on your food? And we're like, yes. I felt like the dinner party on the office.
But again, I think I will take some blame for that, because planning meals is really important when you have that many people. And I mean,
probably
it's a
should have just took
capacity
hold
issue.
because I was letting you and Kimmy,
Yes.
they're the ones with the money and all of that, and I didn't know who was paying for what and what was happening. But if we were going to do pizza, I've been like, we're just going to get it sent to the hotel again.
Yeah, we should have done that. But at the same time, it was important to get people away from the chain restaurants.
Well, and
get
that's
them
true,
into
too.
places like downtown. Downtown Charleston is a fabulous.
But we did
Place.
the what is it? Not Uber. That's where you drive, but where they bring your food.
DoorDash.
We did a DoorDash.
You and I DoorDashed the first night.
Yeah, we could have I was like, I'll DoorDash again. I don't want to go out, but I'm not one of those
That's
people.
a privileged thing too. I mean, these students, a lot of them didn't have a ton of money, so getting them to places. And then we did not go to Welch.
That's true.
Because the specific restaurant I wanted to go to in Welch, the Latin Appalachian, is closed now because he did such an amazing job after the floods, providing his community with meals and free meals from donations, that he's taking a break, and we want to send him all the loving energy we can, because I hope he's well and ready to come back. But we ended up not going to Welch, because if we're not going there to actually to a specific place to visit, like a restaurant, or to spend money there
and bring money,
we're just going through and looking.
Yeah, it just didn't feel right to us, so we just skipped that whole trip. But it worked out pretty well.
Oh, absolutely.
Because on the way, and actually, I'm going to take a break because I really have to pee, and then we're going to start.
Oh, it's 8 o'clock.
Oh, is it?
It's already 8, so I can't do the second hour this time.
Okay.
But I think that's fine. That's a whole
It
whole
is.
day.
Yeah.
Right?
And then we'll talk about we'll start with the story of my grandpa and how all of that.
How do you want to wrap up?
Just, say something like, so that's the close of the first day.
Stay tuned for day 2?
Yeah, stay tuned for day 2. We'll be coming with day 2, in the next week or two. And,
All right.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap up of our first day.
The first day.
And we will have a summary and a podcast of day 2 coming up soon. But I want to say thank you, Lindsay. I haven't done this tour or this type of event with a ride-along buddy.
It was fun.
And you were fabulous. Like, you were a spectacular co-pilot.
I'm a great co-pilot. Ask Tom.
I will...
She's been my partner in crime for 25 years.
There's a reason for that.
And
I know what's up.
She knows what's up.
I used to tell people, it looks like I'm in charge, and I've always kind of got a crew around me. That's how I roll, right? But Lindsay's really the one that runs the show.
She's phenomenal, and you were great company. And when I did have my little mini meltdown, which I'll talk about on the next episode, I felt validated and seen, and everybody came around. And so I just want to say thank you. I couldn't have done what I did without you, and I have another whole list of folks to thank on the next round. But I do want to say that you can be my ride or die any day.
Girl, I will ride or die with you.
That was a lot of fun.
It was. I'd never laughed so hard in my life, and
really
cried
hard, yes.
and
we both shared parts of ourselves that we hadn't shared yet.
And I shared it with complete strangers. Like, things happened that I shared with complete strangers that I never really, I didn't even think I would. And like you said, I felt seen and heard throughout this whole trip, because even when you live in this and people around here and we talk about it, it's like, yeah, we know, but they still have to say, no, that's not how it is.
To exist, they have to close their eyes to it and muddle through it.
Yeah.
But
and it felt
and
really...
even we do it, right?
We do. We have to.
Like
or
when we go up on the flats, right? We normalize these things in this culture, so...
To tolerate it and live with it.
We have to.
To talk to another group that does not live it, and they're just like, wow.
This is jacked up.
But the thing is that they do live it in a different way.
Right.
And when they're like, oh wow, this is messed up, and then they tell you about their life, I'm like, that's messed up, and they're like, damn, we're messed up.
Yeah. And we did some podcasting on Friesland Mountain.
Yes. The last night, yes.
And a lot of profound things happened. We noticed that we are sort of brothers and sisters in this same fight, just in a different way, in a different place.
Which was the whole point of it, and I'm so glad it came across that way, because Velma brought it home with that. And I mean, we know Ariel, because Ariel was basically our co-pilot.
Yes, she was, absolutely. And I will really like to get into gratitude for what she provided.
She's in the next one. Y'all gonna have to wait for Ariel. Like, we will pump her up. That girl is going places, and y'all will remember her name.
You will. And we met her here first.
We did.
So stay tuned for day 2.
Yep.
Coming up
at some time. We don't know. We'll see ya. Bye.
Appalachian Livin is sponsored in part by Wade Law Firm PLLC, Sage Stitch Finance Corporation, representing wisdom and mending what we already have, providing gap funds for resilient renovations.
Appalachian Livin is also brought to you by Hope Money Coaching, rescuing you from financial chaos and leading you to a path of financial wellness. Minimalist Gym, helping men and women navigate their health and fitness without restrictive fad diets.